Thanks, Randy. So Ryan and I are going to tag team this a little bit. We're going to do a real brief. I'll start by doing a real brief CWSU 101 crash course for those of you that may have not had the opportunity to come visit a CWSU, to give you an idea of the type of services that we provide and how we developed the need for this program in the first place. So Ryan, if you could go to the next slide. Ryan is driving all the presentation for me. So a real brief history of CWSUs, if you're not familiar with it. CWSUs were actually born in 1978, and that was in response to a fatal aircraft accident that occurred on April 4th of 1977 in Georgia, Southern Airways Flight 242 DC-9. At one point, I was able to find actual air traffic control on YouTube of the discussions that went back and forth, and it looks like they have taken that down now. But if you're ever curious, there's some good informational videos out there that are a little bit longer in length, too long to show for this presentation, that you can Google and get a little more on the history of that aircraft accident. But the long story short is that this flight and the pilots and co-pilot were trying to pick through some thunderstorms. They were going from Georgia out to the west, and they made their way through the first time, and they had a return flight on the exact same route back. And in the time frame that they've landed, turned around, and decided to come back, the thunderstorms became severe and developed into more of a line. And they got caught into the squall line, and it resulted in a fatal aircraft accident. So the NTSB did an investigation, as they do with any major aircraft accident, and decided that there was also a lack of real-time weather information that was needed inside the center to convey information back to the pilots. So CWSUs were born out of that and put into place in all the air route traffic control centers the following year. Ryan, if you could go to the next slide, please. So I have on here just a little reminder of the phases of flight and what actually happens when you fly in an airplane. Everybody is familiar with the tower. This is just Kansas City specific for the tower in this example. So when you take off in your airplane, the pilot is talking to the tower, and they will get you up into the air, and they will pass you off to a TRACON, or a terminal radar control facility. And they'll do that middle sort of distance shortly after takeoff, up to about 15,000 feet. And then the TRACON will actually pass you off to the Air Route Traffic Control Center. And at the Air Route Traffic Control Center, you have controllers that are still talking to pilots as they get all the way up to cruising altitude. Typically flight level 30,000 feet or so, or a little bit higher. And they are talking to pilots all the way across the country as they're doing their flight. And then as they return back, they get passed off back again to the TRACON to start coming in to get lined up into the airport, and then eventually the tower for landing. Next slide, Ryan. So this is a map of all the RFCS, or Air Route Traffic Control Centers, across the country, and Kansas City Center is right in the middle. Central Region, we have, in addition to Kansas City, Denver Center, Minneapolis Center, Chicago Center, and Indy Center. So we have 5 of them in Central Region. Kansas City specifically, we run 16-hour daily operations. We run 2 shifts, 5 a.m. to 1 p.m. and 1 p.m. to 9 p.m. You notice we do not have overnight shifts. And that is because we work very closely with the air traffic, or with traffic management folks. And if you've flown enough, you know there aren't as many flights overnight. So it's most important for us to be there during the day, especially that morning shift is really critical as they're doing route planning for the day. And so there isn't really as much of a need for us overnight. So they close down at night, so we are not there either. However, they are still getting support from the Aviation Weather Center and still getting their weather information. So all the center weather service units have 4 operational staff, 1 meteorologist in charge, and 3 meteorologists that will all work operations. Okay, Ryan, if you go to the next slide. So as Randy alluded to, we do IDSS all day, all the time. So this is just a little rundown of some of the services that we provide inside the center. This picture is actually of our operations area. We're actually the first desk when you walk into the main operations area for the center. And we do a lot of briefings. We have scheduled briefings that we do for the traffic management unit, and they're just right across the walkway from us. And we do a big group briefing, which includes traffic management units and all the operations staff managers in the center. And we do plenty of on-demand briefings and update briefings as the weather changes or as questions come up. We'll touch on that a little bit more here in a few slides. We do a recorded pre-duty weather briefing, and this has become a very important product that we produce, and this program was developed actually to help us do this more efficiently. We'll touch on that as we get through here as well. We also issue what I like to call the other CWA you may not be familiar with, but center weather advisories. We actually have our own warning product that we can issue out of the center to give the controllers and then eventually pilots weather information. We collaborate with the Aviation Weather Center on the traffic flow management convective forecast, or the TCF forecast, during thunderstorm season, because thunderstorms are very important when it comes to air traffic and air traffic management. And we do specific TRACON forecasts for both St. Louis and Kansas City. Those are issued twice a day. At the center, they are continuously soliciting PIREPs to get real-time information from pilots. So we help them in recognizing when they need to be asking for weather information. And we also do TAF collaboration with WFOs. And then a couple times a year, we do a spring refresher spring season refresher training and winter season refresher training for all the controllers in the center as well. If you haven't been to a CWSU website, I have ours up here, weather.gov/ZKC. You can go check it out and see all the products that we have up there. But in general, again, we do IDSS. We're right there with our FAA partners. We understand how they use weather information. We interpret that weather information for them, and we do a whole lot of collaboration, not only just with our FAA partners, but within the Weather Service as well. Next slide. So collaboration. As you saw on that map with all the CWSUs, we have 7 surrounding CWSUs. So we talk to a lot of the meteorologists around us. We work closely with the National Aviation Meteorologists who are up at the FAA Command Center. And they are sort of like the CWSU, but on a national level when they do air route traffic, when they do traffic management planning. And then we collaborate with the Aviation Weather Center, which we're lucky we have them in our backyard here in Kansas City, the TCF forecast, and additionally, any of the aviation sort of warnings or advisories, SIGMETs and AirMets. And we also have gotten involved with some IDSS planning as large events are recognized with the WFOs. Had some WFOs reach out to us. I can give you a specific example. St. Louis a few years ago knew that they were going to have the PGA golf tournament in their backyard, and it was closer to one of the smaller airports. So we started running some numbers, and I worked with my FAA partners to get an idea if they would see an increase in air traffic at this small airport, and it looked like they would. So we developed a plan to ensure they were providing more updates for their TAF. Since they weren't a large airport, we worked with the WFO to provide more updates like they were a larger airport for that time frame of when they're expecting the more air traffic. And we actually had it written into the IDSS plan, some aviation information as well. So keep that in mind when you're on the field. If it looks like you're going to have a big IDSS event, you may want to consider reaching out to your CWSU to see if you can get an idea if there will be aviation impacts. Next slide. So a little overview of the National Airspace System, going bigger picture outside of the center and air traffic management. So as I mentioned, there's the FAA Command Center. They're right outside of Washington, D.C. And all the centers do collaboration with the Command Center especially during thunderstorm season, to try to make sure that air traffic is routed around weather before it even occurs. They do this with national coordination calls every couple hours. So they are using that TCF forecast, the convective forecast, to help them make their decisions. And they have a set of playbooks and routes that they can refer to try to get airplanes around weather before it develops or right as it's developing. They can also control how traffic is going into airports and TRACONs using traffic management initiatives to try to space out traffic a little bit more if they're starting to see issues, that they could have potential issues at the tower or TRACON level. But all in all, the whole system is in place to try to provide as much safety and efficiency as possible. It's really a balance of keeping everybody safe as the #1 priority, but also trying to make sure that airplanes keep flowing and that that airlines are involved in that as well. All right, next slide. So this is a look at the traffic management unit in Kansas City Center. This is just one of the desks. So you can see they have a whole lot of screens like we do. They have probably even more screens than we do. On the right side there is the actual scope where they can see the airplanes, where they are, what the flight number is, what altitude they're at, just like any controller would in the center. So one of the big distinctions between the traffic management unit and the controllers is that controllers are the ones that are actually talking to the pilots. Traffic management is talking to a lot of the controllers instead to make sure that they are managing the flow of traffic. You'll notice up on the top of the screen there, yes, they have a lot of weather display. It's not directly from the Weather Service, it's an FAA system, but they are also always looking at weather. And then the other monitors down below that help them control where how they are spacing out airplanes and what the load will look like at any one time to make sure that they're balancing and have enough controllers in place talking to the airplanes, they don't get overwhelmed. Next slide. So as I mentioned, they have a playbook of routes that they can refer to. This is just one example that I pulled from their playbook. So if there's weather somewhere, they can convey this information to the airlines and get everybody all on the same page so they're routing around weather instead of trying to fly through it. So you can see this playbook in particular takes all the traffic coming from the west and merges it right through into Kansas City Center and then eventually spreads it back out. Next slide. So why is that important? Things like this happen. So this is an example of an on-demand briefing we would have to give. You can see we have thunderstorms all the way down from Texas through Oklahoma through the middle of Kansas City Center and back up to the north. And airplanes and thunderstorms do not mix. But you'll notice in northern Oklahoma and southern Kansas, there's a gap there. So maybe they have that playbook in place and all the air traffic is trying to go through that little gap. And we will get questions like, how long is that gap going to last? Is that gap going to last? When's it going to close? How much longer can we send airplanes through there? So where in the WFO perspective, you're looking at thunderstorms that are happening to make things a not great situation. We are actually looking where there are spaces in the weather where the controllers can get overwhelmed. A little bit different perspective. Next slide, Ryan. So this is another example of what we would say is a bad day. And again, a little counterintuitive, a little different perspective where we are. See that it looks like we don't have a lot of weather in Kansas City Center. But notice that off to the northeast, blocking Chicago, there's a lot of weather, a lot of thunderstorms. Airplanes aren't going to go near that. So what happens is all the air traffic tries to go around it, and we end up with a lot of airplanes in a very small space. So again, trying to balance that demand and capacity and making sure that everyone stays as safe as possible and that the controllers aren't too overwhelmed. So if you ever have flown and you're waiting for your airplane and the weather is fine where you're at, and you don't understand why it's delayed, it is likely because there is weather somewhere else that is causing a traffic jam, if you will, and that airplane isn't going to be able to get you on time because they are having issues somewhere else. Next slide. So I just have a little bit of a replay as well to give you an idea of what that looks like. This is actual data, actual airplanes in the air. Is it going to work, Ryan? Click on this. To give you an idea of what it looks like when there's weather. So again, this is close to that other scenario that we saw with thunderstorms across the northeast portion. This starts at very early in the morning. So you'll see there's not a whole lot of air traffic at first. And then as we get into the next couple of hours, it'll be closer to early morning when we'll see the airplanes start to especially pick up out of Louisville and Memphis, where the cargo carriers are. You'll see this flurry of activity here in a minute. As the day approaches, they get out first, and they're starting to get out of Louisville there, and then Memphis will be next. But you'll see those thunderstorms that are just right on the eastern border of Kansas City Center and into Indianapolis Center. And this is one of our worst setups because we feed so much air traffic into Chicago. And if they aren't able to use that airspace, it really crowds our airspace. And you can see how that's starting to happen here as we get closer to the flights starting to wake up more and more. And so if you're a controller that's working that airspace in that eastern end of Kansas City Center, you're having a really bad day. All the airplanes are coming right for you. So even though it looks like we don't have any weather and it should be fine, it's really when we have weather around our boundaries and around our edges that can be the most problematic. So even though Kansas City Center, we don't have like an O'Hare or a Denver inside of our center, we are feeding air traffic to the larger hubs, and it can get very crowded and very busy during thunderstorm season. Okay, next slide, Ryan. We'll just go back to the presentation here. So that will lead us to this program and why we have it and how it develops. So the pre-duty recorded weather briefing is a very important piece of what we do now. And it is an FAA requirement for all controllers to watch our pre-duty weather briefing before they come on position. So they have an understanding of what the day's weather is, where the thunderstorms are, and what their day is going to look like. And when I say all controllers, it's not just the controllers that are in the center with us, it's all the underlying facilities that are inside the Kansas City Center airspace, the towers and the TRACONs that fall underneath us that have to listen to and watch this pre-duty weather briefing as well. And that, as you can imagine, is a challenge because you are trying to serve so many different levels of customers and partners. And we try to keep these videos as condensed as possible, 2 minutes or less. So the other requirement is that our first one has to be out the door at 5:45 a.m. because that typically is when the early shift begins at not only the facility, but also the underlying towers and TRACONs. So our shift starts at 5 a.m. You can do the math. We have a very short amount of time to get a recorded briefing done, ready, and out the door. So thankfully, we have Ryan on our team, who is not only an awesome meteorologist, but awesome with all things tech. So he developed a great solution for us to be able to quickly put slides together and do our recording and get everything out the door by our deadline. So now I'm going to turn it over to Ryan, and he's going to go more in depth over our Briefing Builder program.
All right, thank you everybody. Thank you, Jennifer, for giving me this opportunity today to show the Briefing Builder that we've developed here at ZKC for the pre-duty weather briefing. So start off here with a little bit of just background, again, to add to what Jennifer just talked about. This particular setup I'm going to show today was developed in collaboration with the CWSU at ZNY in coordination with Central Region and Eastern Region as well, again, to support this requirement for the pre-duty weather briefing. So ZNY had some techniques that they were using. We had some techniques that we were using, and we got together and kind of came up with the best of everything we were doing collaboratively at both of our offices. So the takeaway here is that this will streamline a lot of the standard PowerPoint interface capabilities that come with PowerPoint 2016. But again, it just streamlines it, makes it really easy so you don't have to be an expert in finding all of the options within the PowerPoint ribbon to get your briefing done. And again, that helps us get this out the door by that 5:45 time frame in the morning. So, but it goes a little bit beyond that. We'll also add the ability to run Python scripts before you load images into the PowerPoint. So again, this allows you to do a little bit more advanced type of image gathering, but it's not required, so you don't have to have this. But if you've got some Python coders at your office, this could be something that they could definitely leverage. And one big thing that we always stress is it eliminates the need for any secondary recording software. You don't need Camtasia. This is free. All you really need is PowerPoint 2016. And like we said, this is something we're using here at the CWSU to do our pre-duty weather briefings, but there's really no reason this couldn't be used for any type of IDSS application at a WFO that you can dream of. So basically what I'm going to do, I'm going to end the presentation here, and we're just going to do a little demonstration of how this works today. So basically, if this is something that you're interested in and want to try, there's a Google folder that has all the files that you need. Everything's in a zip file that you can download. There's also documentation that you can reference to that tells you how to set up the program. And there's also documentation in this documents folder that goes more into how to use it, how to install Python if that's something you want to do, and a little bit of a guide to some of the scripts that are included with the Briefing Builder. But once you have that set up, you're going to get this, you're going to extract that zip file, and you're going to get these this Briefing Builder folder. And the main thing you're going to be looking for here is, at least initially to get started, is just the PowerPoint presentation itself. So I'll pull that up. And this is not going to be a full demonstration of what the ZKC pre-duty weather briefing is, but we're just going to kind of show how this streamlines a lot of those capabilities within PowerPoint. So the first thing I want to draw your attention to is the top of the screen here. So you can navigate this ribbon here to get most of the capabilities of PowerPoint, but I've structured this through command buttons at the top that streamline this process, again, to get it down to where you can put together a briefing very, very quickly. So the first thing I'm going to show is just how we can set up images that are linked to outside sources, whether it be on the web or a local file on your PC. So the way I'll do that at first here, and one thing I should say too is you can edit this PowerPoint however you want. These command buttons at the top only deal with the recording and inserting linked images. So there's no special requirements. This should work with most any type of PowerPoint template you have. So I just want to state that up front. But first, I'm just going to kind of show how you can do it through the normal way of adding an image, just to show some contrast. So if you go to Insert, again, you got to remember where all this stuff is at, and Pictures, and I'm going to grab an image I've got saved, a URL over here. I'm going to paste this in here, and you can just paste that in there normally. And this is just a prog chart from AWC. And I'm going to insert and link that image. So you see it pops it in there. It's kind of big and awkward. You can resize it, set it however you want, and then you've got it in there. That's great and all, right? Well, let's say I don't remember the link to this image, right? Well, where is this actually at? It's kind of hard to find. You go to change picture, it's not really there. There is a way to find it, which I just recently learned actually. You go to File, Info, Edit Links, and then you get this link, this list of all the images that are linked in your PowerPoint. And again, if you have a large briefing, you might have a whole bunch of links here and you don't know which one's on which slide. It's not the greatest thing in the world. So let's go back and let's do this again, but I'm going to use the interface that we set up. So to redo this example, click this little construction icon up here and you get an editor menu. There's a few things you can do here. But the main thing I'll talk about right now is inserting the linked image. So you click Insert Linked Image. This is an image from the web. You can also do local. It'll give you the interface to where you can find something on your local drive. But if you go to Insert and Web, then you can just paste that link back in there. And it'll load it, and it sizes it kind of nice, which is good. There's VBA scripting in the background that's doing all of this. And then I want to know where this image is. So you can click it, and then you click that same construction open editor menu button again, and there is your route to where the image is sourced. And you can change it right there on the fly. So it just makes things easier, because in the morning when you're trying to put together a briefing, you don't got a lot of time. You need to get things done. And then this is now linked, so every time you load the briefing, it will automatically update. So that's one example of how we can add an image. So another example I want to show is that was a pretty simple image. So again, we're just looking at a route here, static URL, pretty straightforward, a GIF image on the web. Well, let's say we want to add something, say, from the Wave website. We'd use the same procedure and insert linked image from the web. But I'm going to grab, and here's an example I'm going to show. This is an animated image of the jet stream. Again, this is a long, complicated URL that you pass arguments into. A little bit more complex, right? So we're going to take that, we'll copy that. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to do that. Sorry. What you want to do with these is you want to actually wrap it up into a tiny URL. It'll work a lot better. You'll have a lot better chance of success. So overall, let me grab that. I had it all set up here. Here we go. So if you go to like a tinyurl.com, you can make a shorter URL for something complex like this. So you go to load the image, and hopefully it's going to fail. It should fail, yes. Sometimes when you load complicated things like this, it fails. So I've got the VBA script set up to automatically show this image that says, hey, it had a little bit of a problem loading this. Go ahead and use the old alternate procedure, and it walks you through how to do that. Where you right-click on the screen, change the picture, browse, and then paste it in, insert and link. So if you have folks that are used to doing it this way, it still works fine with this briefing builder setup. And it'll take a little bit because this is an animated GIF. Worked well this morning. There we go. So we've got the animated GIF. And now that we've inserted it this way, if you click it and then go back to that construction button, it'll give you the URL to the image. So you have that all saved and ready to go. So those are the basic ways to insert images. One other thing that you can see from this construction menu is you can insert a blank slide. So if you want to just quickly add a blank slide and you don't remember where that's at in the ribbon, just hit the button, it'll add you a slide. You can take that out. And the other thing it can do, and I'll go to the last slide here. I'll take that off because it's what I want to show, but you go to that menu again, you can insert a date and timestamp. Now this date and timestamp will update anytime you update the briefing with this update button up here, which I'll show in a minute, or when you save the briefing. So it's going to always have a fresh timestamp on when was this last touched by someone, so people know exactly what time or how old this product that you're putting together is. So that's the basics of how to set up a briefing. Everything else you can do just like you normally would in PowerPoint. So now I'm going to go through, just kind of show you how you record a briefing. And this is, to me, where this really saves time in the morning and streamlines the process greatly. So I have this one, I will note, I have this model forecast slide hidden. We'll come back to that in a minute, but any slides you have hidden won't show when you record, so that's fine. We can leave that hidden. So the recording process is pretty straightforward. The first button up here is for Python. I'm going to skip that for a second. We'll get back to that. This first little demo I'm going to do doesn't involve any Python. But you basically march your way from left to right across this interface at the top. So it makes it real simple to keep you on track to create a briefing. So the first thing you could do is click this, and then let's say you've had the PowerPoint open for a little while, maybe something's updated in the background, one of the images is old. This will automatically update all of the images on the slide. So normally, what you would do to update your images that are linked is you'd save the PowerPoint and close it. You can also go back out to that File and Info menu. But this just makes it simple. You hit that, updates all the images. Now let's say you also have a long briefing with lots of animated images that take a long time to load, but I just want to update this prog chart. It's the only thing I want to do. Well, you can click the update button and then select no, and it'll just update that one slide. That's it. So again, little time savers that help us get that briefing done quickly. So that's basically how you can get your slides set up. So the next thing is just to record your audio. Now I'm just going to go through this real quick, just kind of put a little audio on each slide. The thing I want to note about this is if you're using Camtasia or something that you're capturing your whole screen, you got to kind of capture the whole thing all in one shot. The nice thing about this setup is it saves the audio individually for each slide. So, and I'm gonna kind of make a mistake on purpose here, just to kind of show how this works. So the first thing you do, when you're ready, got your first slide selected, hit the record, check to make sure this checkbox is checked. That means your mic's plugged in. If it's not checked, you probably have a mic unplugged. So we're good to go here. So I'm just gonna record a little bit of audio, just some basic stuff. Welcome to a demonstration of the Briefing Builder. This is a slide of, what is this slide? I don't remember what it is. I forgot, so I'm gonna go to the next slide. This is an animated image of the jet stream from the Wave website. Thank you, have a great day. Okay, so obviously I messed up that Kona slide. I forgot where I was for a second. Happens in the morning, there's a lot going on. So we can redo that one slide. We don't have to do the whole thing. So basically what you do there is just select the slide you want to record, have your finger ready on the escape key. Go ahead and hit start recording. This is a CONUS prog chart from AWC. And there we go, we've replaced the audio. So once that's done, let's say you want to add some live screen recording of a web page. You don't want to just insert a simple image. So an example that's typical for a CWSU, which I'll pull in here, is this are the air mets for turbulence. Say we got a little bit of low turbulence this morning, so I want to brief this, but I kind of want to dynamically, brief over while I'm interacting with this web page. So that's pretty easy to do. You just click, let's say, and I want to put it after the CONUS prog forecast. So I'd select that, and then I'm going to click the insert screen audio recording. We'll click that. It gives me a new slide. I'm going to drag this over here. And then at the top of the interface, you can pin it there so it doesn't go away. You can change your area that you want to record. And again, a lot of these things are just basic things in PowerPoint, but we're just streamlining it, making it really quick and easy to get to. Okay, we're all ready to record. It's going to count down to 3 once I hit record, and then I'll be ready to go. And I have full control of the web page behind this. Okay. Here are the turbulence air mets for today through the central portion of the CONUS. Okay, so I got that. I'm satisfied with my briefing. Click yes, and we're good to go. Now all you got to do is hit the play button. And that's it. Briefing is done. So you've recorded it, looked at it, reviewed it. Everything looks great. Just hit the save icon. It'll ask if you want to save an archive, which I'll explain that here in a second. That's an additional feature. Hit yes, and you'll see that it's saving it off, and it saves it in that briefing builder folder with a particular name, which you can edit, and I'll show you how to do that real quickly too. And that's it. Then you just upload it to however you upload your briefing. Here at ZKC, we upload it through Vimeo, and that's how we get it out to the end user. So again, that's the basic setup for how you do the briefing. So one other thing I want to mention here, there's a button up here I haven't talked much about, which is configuration. You open this up, and the thing I want to show right here is, first of all, you have the name of the file. So if you want it to have a different name, say you're not a CWSU and you want it to be called IDSS briefing, whatever, you can change that here at the top. You can also set it up as an MP4 or a WMV. Either way, you'd set that here. Now, let's say you want to, again, it always overwrites that one file in the briefing builder directory for your main save, again, trying to make it simple. But if you want to save archives of every image or of every briefing you do, you can enable the archive. You'll set your time zone here. Set the number of days you want the archive to be. So after 30 days, it'll automatically delete videos. And then the name you want the video to have. And then it'll also append a timestamp based on your time zone into the name of the file. So we'll update that configuration. And I'll save it again. We'll see how that works. You'll see it'll save twice. So we're going to save once, briefing, one video remaining. Then the new video we just did, the archive goes right into that archive folder. So again, that's something that the Vba scripting is doing in the background. Again, that's something that you're not going to get from basic PowerPoint. So that's an added feature there. The next thing, which to me is the most exciting thing, being kind of a computer programmer, is being able to utilize Python. So we'll go back into that configuration setting, and you can enable Python. And I have documentation in the Google folder that goes through how to set up your basic Python install, and also some guides to some of the scripts that are included with the briefing builder. I'm going to show one of them here quickly. But you'll set the location of Python on your PC, and then also the name and file extension for the Python script you're going to run. And these are always saved in the Python scripts folder. So if you go back to these folders, there's a Python folder, you got scripts, and there's that get images that I'm going to run. So that's all that you need to do there. And to run a Python script, all you got to do, assuming your Python script works, is click this Run Python Script button, and it'll run. And you'll see what this did is it basically went to the NCEP website, looked for the latest model run of the HER. So it looked at the current model run, said, oh, that's not it. Went to the next one, found a current run at 14 Zulu, and downloaded and saved those. So the reason why this can be quite useful is, let me unhide this model forecast slide. We're going to go ahead and add a new slide, just like we did before, from the web. And we find my URLs that I saved. Here we go. So you'll notice a lot of imagery that you find on the web is, has date timestamps in it. So here we got model data from the 6th at 12 Zulu, which, okay, you could go in here and you could always edit this every single time, but that's kind of a pain, right? So we'll load that image in there. But now I'm going to repoint this. I'm going to go to my editor menu, local network, and I'm going to find this in my briefing builder folder. And the Python script saved to the images folder within Python, and there are the 3 NCEP images we gathered. So I'm going to take that 1 hour forecast, insert it, and now when you're briefing in the morning, whenever you run that Python script, it's going to download those 3 images and always get you the latest model run of the HER 1, 3, and 6 hours in that case that I had set up. And it's going to be ready to go in your briefing every day. So if that's something you want to have in your briefing, it's all set up. So again, that's one example of a Python script. If you have some Python developers, the world is wide open. You can pretty much do whatever you can dream of. Just the nice thing here is, your briefer or forecaster doesn't have to be a coder, doesn't have to know how to run a Python script. They just got to hit that button and it'll run the Python script. And then to get this to load into the briefing the next day, you'd hit this update and update all the slides again. So that's basically how it works. One other thing that I'm working on for Python, I'm going to make more scripts for this, but with these NCEP images, make a script that can pull in, say, that 1, 3, 6, or maybe the forecast for every hour and wrap them into an animated image and then make that available. That's something that's not directly available on the website. So again, it's kind of an advanced feature, the Python scripting, but it adds something to what the briefing builder does. But again, you don't need that as your, if you don't have Python, you don't want to set that up, you just want to pull in images and make briefings, it works perfectly well without it. And all you got to do is disable that in the configuration. So that's it. That's kind of the demonstration of the briefing builder. Find my presentation again. Seem to have lost it. It's around here somewhere. There we go. All right. So again, if this is something that you're interested in right now, I've only really shared this latest version because we've done a lot of, and I'm not going to get into the history of that, but a lot of versions and improvements based on feedback. So only really have this working at one other office right now in a testing phase. But if you want to be one of those folks that can test this or want to test this, just request access from myself or Jennifer. We'll grant you access to the Google folder. And once I get a little bit more feedback from the field, I'll open this up more widely to be distributed. But so that is what we are using here at ZKC to do our pre-duty weather briefings. But it seems like something that would be useful to the field, as a whole. So just to end, I kind of want to do a few little thank yous here. Scott Suckup out at ZNY, he's a former forecaster there, came up with their version of using Python scripts to pull in images. So that kind of opened the door for what we do here at ZKC to meld that together. I'm just advancing, doing more scripting, kind of melding what they do at ZNY into our VBA scripts at ZKC. So again, thank you to Scott for doing that work. I also want to thank Brian Hirsch and Charles Bell for leadership with this. Brian got Scott and I together, said, hey, we got 2 really good at techniques. Let's meld those, and then here's the end product of that. And Charles has kept us up to date with the requirements of what is needed in the pre-duty weather briefing as we go forward to make sure that the briefing builder can accommodate those needs. So many thank yous there. And I also really want to thank Jamie Underland and Mindy Behrens out at ZIU and ZID for their testing of the briefing builder. They took the program, put it through its paces, lots of feedback, ran into issues. So a lot of the updates that are in this new version are based on the feedback that they and their staffs provided. So I want to just really thank them for that. And I also want to thank Graham Weston up at the Anchorage CWSU, found me some VBA code that had kind of eluded me, that I won't get into it too much, but it really advanced the capabilities of what this briefing builder can do. So many thanks to Graham for that. And with that, any questions?